You never think about how vulnerable a window makes you until someone's looking through it. I used to love my room at night, the hum of the cicadas outside, the soft breeze rustling the curtains. But that was before I saw her, before the nightmares started. It was a Tuesday night when I saw the old woman for the first time. I was at my desk, halfway through a true crime podcast, trying to ignore how empty the house felt when my dad worked the late shift. That's when I noticed the movement outside my window. At first, I thought it was the wind, but when I turned, there she was. Her face, God, her face. It was pressed so hard against the glass that her features flattened, her gray hair hanging limp and greasy. Her eyes didn't blink, didn't move, just stared right at me. I screamed so loud my throat burned. By the time I scrambled to my feet and knocked over my lamp, she was gone. Probably just your imagination, Dad said when I told him later. But it wasn't. I know what I saw. For the next few days, all anyone could talk about was her. The stories spread like wildfire. Old Mrs. Callahan swore she woke up to the woman peeping into her bedroom. Mr. Harris said he saw her standing in his backyard while he was putting his twins to bed. But no one had any real answers. Who was she? Where did she go when the sun came up? I thought about her every night as I lay awake in bed, too scared to sleep. Then the disappearances started. The first to go missing was Mr. Bennett, the old man who walked his dog around town every morning. Then it was a couple from the other side of Greystone. Their kitchen window had been left open and bloodstains trailed across the floor. The sheriff kept saying they were investigating, but it felt like the town was sinking into chaos. People locked their doors, pulled their curtains tight, but still, she came. And still, I saw her. The second time she appeared at my window, it was worse, much worse. I'd told myself I was imagining things, that if I stayed calm and rational, she wouldn't come back. But when I glanced up from my journal that night, she was there again. Her face was wrong. I don't know how else to describe it. The skin around her jaw sagged in strange places, like it didn't belong to her. And when I looked closer, I saw streaks of something red running down her neck. I didn't scream this time. I was too scared to move. She tilted her head, almost like she was smiling, then she vanished into the dark. The next day, I told my best friend Robin about what I saw. She didn't laugh. My mom said she's picking people, Robin whispered. The ones she stares at twice, they're next. I wanted to tell Dad, but he wouldn't understand. He was already working himself into the ground trying to keep us afloat after Mom died. Instead, I started digging. I spent hours in the library, reading old newspaper clippings. That's when I found it. A story from 50 years ago. A man named Charles Beckett had terrorized Greystone, killing his victims and this is the part that made my stomach turn, wearing their faces. His body was never found, and now, here we were, 50 years later. That night, the scratching started. I was lying in bed, clutching a flashlight like it was a lifeline, when I heard it. Soft, deliberate scratching at my window. My chest tightened, but I couldn't stop myself. I turned the flashlight toward the glass, and there she was. But it wasn't her. The gray hair slipped from her scalp as she turned toward me, sliding to the ground like a discarded wig. Her face wasn't a face at all. It was stitched, uneven and raw, barely clinging to the skull underneath. She smiled, revealing teeth yellowed and jagged, then mouthed a single word. Run. I didn't need to be told twice. By the time I found Dad in the kitchen, I was shaking so badly I could barely talk. But he understood enough. He grabbed his shotgun, told me to stay put, and ran out the door. I should have listened to him. I should have stayed where it was safe. But I couldn't just sit there. The neighbor's house was dark when I got there, but the door was wide open. "Dad?" I whispered, stepping inside. The smell hit me first, metallic and sharp, like pennies in my mouth. Then I saw the blood smeared across the floor, trailing into the living room. "Kim!" The voice came from behind me, low and rasping. When I turned, the man, stood there, his stitched face grinning. His hands were covered in blood, and he held something small and shiny that I didn't want to look at too closely. "Lovely night for a visit," he said, stepping toward me smiling. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the edge of the rug. I hit the floor hard, the flashlight skittering out of my hand. He loomed over me, the grin stretching wider, impossibly wide as he raised the knife. I closed my eyes, bracing for the end. But then, the blast of a shotgun tore through the room. When I opened my eyes, Dad was standing in the doorway, smoke curling from the barrel of the shotgun. "Kim, get out of here," he shouted. But the thing, wasn't done. He lunged at Dad faster than I thought possible, and the two of them crashed into the wall. Adrenaline took over. I grabbed the flashlight and swung it as hard as I could, catching him in the side of the head. He let out a pained yell and stumbled backward, giving Dad just enough time to grab his gun and fire again. This time, the shot hit him square in the chest, and he went down, gasping, writhing. "Dad, come on!" I yelled, grabbing his arm. Together, we ran outside, the wind whipping around us. Behind us, the house flickered with light as the basement, where the man had obviously poured a trail of gasoline earlier, ignited. We didn't stop running until we reached Dad's truck. Neither of us uttered a word on the way to the sheriff's office. By the time the fire department arrived, there wasn't much left of the house. Or him. They never found a body. They said the fire was too hot, that it could have burned him down to nothing. But I know better. Sometimes, late at night, I feel it. That prickle on the back of my neck, like someone's watching. And every time I pass a window, I can't help but glance at the glass, just in case.